You've likely heard Switch 2 sold 3.5 million in 4 days and broke records in various nations. This is an amazing result that few would have said was possible just a couple months ago. I've also heard that this doesn't matter at all and people are coping that demand will fall off a cliff at any moment. It won't. Take it from me, someone who's analyzed the hardware business for over a decade, and in January for my first video, correctly called Switch 2's launch success in the US. And I've seen nothing to suggest that Switch 2 demand is less than what I predicted. This success was not hard to see coming, but it is still surprising it happened. The reports late last year of Nintendo starting mass production early were accurate. No other console has ever had more than 2 million prepared for the first week, let alone 3. I want to provide context for every number we have. Some you might be aware of, others you wouldn't connect the dots to, so I'll start worldwide. 3.5 million in 4 days is crazy when you look at the previous fastest launch, which should be PS5, PS4, and Xbox One sold over 1 million in a day, and their successors launched in more regions. Those are day ones, though. The only consoles we have a solid week one for are Nintendo's, because they used to provide weekly sales graphs for their biggest regions. Pixel counting those puts Switch at over 1.4 million without what Nintendo considers other regions. At best, they'd add another 100,000. No consoles touch 2 million for weeks, and need at least a month to hit 3 million. The best result after 2 months is PS5 at 4.4 million, with PS4 slightly behind that. Xbox One and Xbox Series around 3 million in 7 to 8 weeks. This is where I want to emphasize that just because you have millions of units out in the market, that doesn't mean people will buy it. PS4 and 5 both had 4.5 million shipped in the first 2 months, selling nearly all of that. Xbox wasn't far behind PlayStation in the first few weeks. Were they supply constrained? Yes, for Xbox Series, and no for Xbox One. That had nearly 1 million unsold. Switch 2's success was not guaranteed, and from what can be seen in the US, you can't buy it anywhere after multiple resupplies. If there were more units, they'd be sold as well. In fact, based on when PS4 and Switch each became easier to find, week 1 might have only satisfied half of initial demand. But why did Switch 2 break so many records? Two reasons. Nintendo prepared better by producing sooner than usual, and objectively offered a compelling product with an enticing launch title. Mario Kart World's success is staggering. Most consoles sold are the bundle, and it has an attach rate around 80% without digital. This is with Switch 2 being the most expensive Nintendo device ever, with its main game being $80. If you ignore that most people are buying the edition that has the game at 50. Switch 2 is not expensive compared to the market. Switch 1 was $300 versus a $300 PS4 and Xbox One. Switch 2 is $500 versus a $500 PS5 and now $600 Series X. Switch 1 also has a highly engaged market with stellar hardware and software sales 8 years and 150 million consoles later. Is it a surprise that Switch 2 would see high sales, even with higher prices considering the market has already adapted to those? Look at PS5 selling almost as much as PS4. Going down to the region level, Japan bought 1 million Switch 2s, making it the best launch ever. The prior best was PS2 at 630,000, but you might have seen a report it sold 980,000. That's accounting for 2 weeks of pre orders that weren't fulfilled. Sony said they shipped 720,000 at the time. It's likely Switch 2 did better than 950,000, as Famitsu doesn't track My Nintendo Store, where 2.2 million people tried to pre order the thing. With Europe, the only numbers we have are from the UK, France, and Spain. Bringing in that Europe graph from earlier, those three nations were about 55% of the market, 230,000 versus 420,000. I could take that 55%, apply it to their Switch 2 sum of 440,000, and Europe would be looking at a week one total of about 800,000. To the US, Switch 2 in 1 week outsold the full month launch record of PS4 at 1.1 million, and that doesn't include my Nintendo Store. For context, Circana's weekly sales don't include all retailers, but their initial projection is Switch 2 selling 1.3 million with them. The full month report that releases in July will contain the whole market. 1.3 million in a week would be more than any prior Nintendo device sold in 2 months. Switch in 9 weeks had not passed 1.2 million. Coming back to the worldwide total, we can see what each region contributed. The US for Nintendo makes up over 80% of the total Americas region, so that would be about 1.6 million. Europe is calced at around 800,000, and Japan will just have at 1 million. That's 3.4 million without other regions. All that's left is the future. What more can Switch 2 ship in June? When you look at production capability, it's safe to say Nintendo has eclipsed PlayStation and Xbox. What were they able to ship after launch week? PS4, Xbox One were doing over 500,000 a week, while PS5, Xbox Series were less than that, but it was COVID. Come on. With 3 weeks plus 2 days to June 30th, if Nintendo is only able to ship a similar amount to 2013 standards, we should expect another 1.5 to 2 million. Sales are over 3.5 million. Shipments could have been up to 4 million. So a range of low 5 million to about as high as 6 million. That would be akin to peak holiday sales for PlayStation, with prime PS4 sales from Black Friday to Christmas around that much. 6 million would also be short of what I expect is initial launch demand of about 7 million. PS4 and Switch were hard to buy reliably until both shipped 7 million. If Nintendo sends out 600,000 a week, Switch 2 could be selling out in major regions until late July. All in all, Switch 2 is a massive success that still has room to grow. It's broken so many records already, and it can break even more. We can't say for sure when Switch 2 sales will stabilize. It's far too soon to make a guess to how successful it can be, but it will never be late enough to doom Nintendo. There were people saying the Switch story is exhausted after it already proved to be a success. Nintendo will never end. With that, I hope you come away with this video having learned something. Thanks for watching, take care.